Hey guys, how's it going? Yuri here. Hope you're having a great day. Hope you had a great weekend. Change of scenery today. I'm up on the couch. Amy's taking Oscar for a walk, so I've got the house to myself. A little bit of quiet is nice. So I'm going to take advantage of this to shoot another video for you. And this week, we're going to be talking about one of the most powerful forms of exercise to help you burn more fat. And it is none other than interval training. Now I'm here on the couch with the dogs, Oscar, Jax and Layla's buried beneath the pillow, so if they make an appearance, you'll know who they are, if you don't already. So I've got some notes here because we're going to cover some really cool stuff in this video, including what interval training is exactly, for those of you who don't necessarily know. We're going to look at the best protocols for specifically burning fat with respect to interval training, because really there are thousands of different ways you can do interval training. And we're going to look at why interval training, like what's happening physiologically that makes interval training very powerful for helping you burn fat specifically. Now before we get into this stuff, I'm going to tell you that tomorrow I'm going to talk about the other health benefits and performance benefits of interval training that I'm not going to touch on in this video, because in this video I want to specifically kind of drill down with respect to burning fat. Okay, I'm not talking about losing weight. I'm talking about actually using your fat cells and shrinking them down in size because your body's using more fat as a fuel. Okay? So let's start off by talking about what interval training is. Now, interval training, for some of you who do know, just kind of bear with me for a second. For those who don't know what interval training is, essentially it's bouts of high and low intensity. Okay? So imagine going for a run. I'm just going to use running as an example. If you're going to go for a run, it would be a combination of sprinting, jogging, sprinting, jogging, sprinting, jogging, okay? And again, it doesn't have to be sprinting. It can be running faster, whatever that might be, and running slower. It could be jogging and walking, jogging and walking. So it's bouts of higher intensity mixed in with bouts of lower intensity. So why is that powerful? And why is it better, at least from a fat burning perspective, than low intensity, kind of long duration cardio? So the big benefit is really about intensity. And because let's say you could sprint, let's say your maximum possible sprint duration is 10 seconds, okay? You can do 10 seconds and then you're done. Now you can't do that for 3 minutes, right? So you need to kind of balance it out with some recovery periods. But if you can do 10 seconds, recover for 30, do 10 seconds again, recover for 30, do 10 seconds again, recover for 30, do that for 10 minutes, you're going to be doing, full out sprinting for several minutes as opposed to just doing it for 10 seconds. So that's why the benefits of interval training are so powerful, because you're spending more time near your maximum possible, capacity. And that is very, very important. Now, for some people who have been taught or told that it's dangerous to spend more time near your maximum heart rate, that is absolute garbage. So flush that down the toilet. Unless you have some kind of heart condition, in which case you obviously want to check with your physician. For the average individual, whether you're overweight, untrained, fully trained, a professional athlete, the more time you can spend near your maximal heart rate, the fitter you're going to be, the more fat you're going to burn. And it's the same reason that with all the athletes I've worked with, we use interval training, because it is the best way to improve performance, but also for everyday individuals looking to burn more fat, it is the best way to burn more fat. So get different protocols. So I just use an example of 10 seconds full out sprint, 30 seconds recovery. Now a very typical one that you'll see in the literature or talked about is what's called Tabata, which is 10 seconds on, 20 seconds off. It's repeated a number of times and you've got a little bit of recovery in between. Okay, so that's one kind of prominent protocol that's used in the research. Another very prominent kind of, at least in a lot of the research studies that is used, is called the Wingate test. And this is something I would never want any of you to do unless you're being paid as a lab rat to do this, because it'll literally make you vomit. And I remember in school, we all of us underwent a Wingate test as part of one of our biomechanics classes or exercise physiology classes. I think about half the people in the class actually threw up, because it's a full out 30-second test on the bike with increasing resistance. So they add resistance to the bike, to the flywheel. For 30 seconds you're going full out and you build up so much lactic acid that by the end of it, when you get off, you actually feel nauseous and end up throwing up. So a lot of studies use that with about 4 minutes of recovery in between, and then they'll repeat that 4 to 6 times depending on the study. And that's probably the most commonly used interval training protocol in the literature, but I don't recommend you use that. So what is, again, before I get into specific protocols for fat loss, some other ones that I've used in a lot of my other interval training workouts are longer, right? So they might be 2 minutes at 80% of your maximum running speed, worked in with, let's say, 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 4 minutes of recovery. So the more recovery you need, if you take longer recovery bouts, that would be used in the case where you're not necessarily very fit. Okay, so the fitter you become, the less recovery you need. So instead of recovering for 4 minutes, you would recover for 3 minutes, then you recover for 2 minutes, right? So the amount of recovery is dwindling down. Again, there's a lot of different ways to do this, and that's why I'm here. It's just to really help you not have to worry about putting all this stuff together. It's just kind of giving you what you need for awesome results. So let's talk about specifically with regards to fat loss. I want to talk about a couple studies. I have some notes in front of me, so if I'm looking down, you'll know what I'm looking at. I want to make reference to a couple things. So there's a couple things to understand with regards to fat burning. When you produce a lot of lactic acid, that actually there's pathways in your body that prevent, when lactic acid prevents fat to be used as a fuel. Okay, so studies that use longer intervals at high intensities, even, again, it's going to depend. Like even with what I'm about to say, some studies will still show benefit, but the longer the intervals, the more lactic acid is produced, right? It's like if you exercise full out for a long period of time, you're going to get that burning sensation. That's lactic acid. Now, when that happens, your body's not going to be able to use fat as much as a fuel because there's a couple pathways that are kind of inhibited. Nonetheless, there are studies that have found, I'm going to make reference to one specifically here, that was done with 2 minutes at about, a full out effort as best as they could do for 2 minutes with 3 minutes of recovery, and that was done for 20 minutes. And this was done in older males, mid-40s, not that that's old, but mid-40s, early 50s with type 2 diabetes. Okay, so these men were overweight, had type 2 diabetes, 20 minutes of intervals, 2 minutes almost as full out as they could go, 3 minutes of recovery, and this was done over 8 weeks. And this is a pretty significant finding. They found a 44% decrease in abdominal fat. 44%. That is huge. And that's a longer interval, okay? So just keep that in mind for a second as I talk about the shorter intervals. Now, I've talked about this and I've put together reports on this where with regards to losing fat specifically, you want to inhibit lactic acid production, right? Maybe, maybe not. Okay, so I'm going to tell you why. So another study in the European Journal of Applied Physiology in 1999 showed they compared 2 different interval protocols, 6 seconds on, 9 seconds off. So 6 seconds full out, 9 seconds recovery, or 24 seconds full out and 36 seconds recovery. Okay, the same 2 to 3 work to rest ratio. Okay, so they're working 2, recovering 3. Got that? 6 to 9, 24 to 36. Okay, and they both did the same intensity. So the intensity during the 6-second bout versus the 24-second bout was the same, and the recovery bouts were the same intensity, and they both worked for 40 minutes. Now, the shorter term, right, so the 6 to 9 second group showed significantly more fat loss. The researchers in this study concluded that the reason for this is because of myoglobin. Okay, so myoglobin is it's like hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is in your red blood cells in your blood. Myoglobin is a protein in your muscles that holds onto oxygen. And your muscles only have about a 15-second store worth of myoglobin, above which your cells will start tapping into other energy-producing pathways like glycolysis, right, anaerobic metabolism, which produces lactic acid as a byproduct. So when that happens, you inhibit, according to these researchers, you inhibit the ability of your cells to use fat as a fuel, right? Because when you want to burn fat, specifically, you need oxygen. And that's why all of these ridiculous low intensity, long duration recommendations for cardio were set forth because they figure that if you work for a long period of time at a low intensity, you're using fat as a fuel, and that's true, right? As I'm sitting here, I'm mainly using fat as my fuel source, okay? But if I sit down all day, am I going to burn fat? Am I going to get thinner? No, right? So it's all about the intensity. And with this study, they showed that the short duration was very important because it wasn't at that 15-second mark where the myoglobin stores or the oxygen stores within the cells were starting to get depleted, okay? So a lot of the research that's been done has been done as a result of that initial study in 1999. And I'm just going to give you a couple other protocols that have been used in the literature. 8 seconds on, 12 seconds off for 20 minutes. So they did about 60 repetitions of 8-second sprints, okay? So essentially in that protocol, they're doing 8 minutes of, so listen to this, 8 minutes of sprinting. Try doing that just full out. No way, right? So that's the power of interval training. 8 minutes of sprinting during 20 minutes of work. That is incredible. And other ones, like 6 seconds on, full out, 30 seconds recovery, times 10 reps, so for 6 minutes. And so generally, here's what you want to think about, okay? You can look at this two ways, and from what I understand, from my experience, the shorter the interval, the more powerful it's going to be for helping you lose fat. Okay, there are some studies that show that longer periods of intervals, like 2 to 3 minutes, can also help fat loss as well. But generally, the shorter the interval, if you don't get into that producing that lactic acid production, the better off you're going to be for burning fat. Now let's look at, okay, so why does this happen? Why do intervals help you burn more fat than steady state cardio? So steady state cardio, I essentially define as your talk test pace. Now if you've used any of my workouts before, I refer to the warm-up as the talk test pace, which is whereby we can carry a conversation while you're moving, okay? Now that would be your typical kind of long duration, low intensity, on the elliptical, on the treadmill, watching TV, reading a magazine, wasting your time type of exercise. And here's the reason. It does not elicit a hormonal response that interval training does, okay? Interval training, because of its intensity, increases 3 classes of hormones that are very important for helping you burn fat. The first one is growth hormone. Okay, when you increase your intensity, and again, this can apply to really any form of exercise, the higher the intensity, the more growth hormone will circulate in your blood. When that happens, growth hormone goes to your fat cells and specifically releases fatty acids from their stored form. When those circulate into the blood, they go to the cells and they're used as a fuel source. That's a good thing. Secondly, you get an increase of catecholamines, which are your epinephrine and norepinephrine, or adrenaline and noradrenaline hormones, which again are elevated. In some studies, they've shown elevations of norepinephrine of 14.5 times and epinephrine of 6.3 times greater than baseline levels after doing just 6 minutes of intense, sorry, my phone, I'm just going to turn this off, of intense interval training. Okay, so that's amazingly powerful. And again, what does epinephrine do? Same thing as growth hormone. It goes to your fat cells. It literally says, hey, we need the fat for fuel. We're going to break it down. Free fatty acids go into the blood, they go to the cells, they're oxidized as fuel. So that's amazingly powerful. And the third hormone that is a very similar effect to this is cortisol. Right? Cortisol is a stress hormone, so if you're exercising is a form of stress, you're also going to have higher levels of cortisol, which will break down fat stores and different energy reserves in your body. So in the short term, that's a great thing. In the long term, we don't want elevated levels of cortisol, on a 24/7 basis. But that's why interval training, you only need to do 2 to 3 times. Okay, that's the beautiful thing, is 2 to 3 bouts of interval training is all you need per week, and it doesn't have to be 40 minutes. I want to show you something amazingly powerful here, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this tomorrow with respect to glucose, blood glucose. Okay, when you exercise, here's a big reason to do interval training versus long duration, low intensity stuff. When you do long duration, okay, I'm going to refer to one study that looked at 20 minutes of steady state cardio. They did 20 minutes of long duration steady state cardio. What happened afterwards was a drop in blood sugar. Okay, So that's known as hypoglycemia, and that's not a good thing because afterwards you start getting all like weird and stuff. You start seeking sugar. So what they did was after this 20-minute bout, they had the participants who were in this study type 1 diabetics. They had them do one 10-second sprint, just one. Okay, so 20 minutes, just finish off with one 10-second sprint. What did they find? The people who did the 10-second sprint after the 20 minutes attenuated that glucose drop. So they maintained their glucose levels, and that's very important for people with type 1 diabetes, or diabetes in general, right? And why did that happen? Again, because the sprint, the high intensity, elicited the release in norepinephrine, epinephrine, growth hormone, and cortisol, which broke down fat to be used as fuel, and broke down obviously different reserves of carbohydrates to be used as blood sugar during that activity. Okay, so those are some of the reasons that interval training is amazingly powerful for fat loss. Now, I want to also talk about one important thing that I've actually talked about in my free abs course, which with respect to abdominal fat specifically. Now, epinephrine, if you remember, if you've taken this my abs course, you'll remember that I talk about beta 2 or beta adrenergic receptors and alpha 2 receptors. So beta adrenergic receptors are mainly located in your abdomen, and they respond to the presence of epinephrine or adrenaline. Okay? So when adrenaline levels are elevated, they will stimulate those receptors which are on your fat cells, right? Those are receptors on fat cells in the abdomen specifically, and they will burn fat in the abdomen specifically. That's why that one study I alluded to earlier with the diabetic patients, a 44% drop in abdominal fat by increasing the intensity of their interval training over 2 minutes. That is significant. You don't get that, you don't get these hormone responses with slow cardio. Or that's why it really frustrates me when people waste their time. I mean, it's not a waste of time. I mean, I'd rather have you move than do nothing. But as an example, I was in the gym last week. I was doing a short 30-minute workout, high intensity. Basically, I just, bouncing all over the place. I wanted to hop on the treadmill for 2 minutes of sprinting between the stuff I was doing. And every single treadmill was being used by people walking. Not on an incline, not at a high intensity, walking. 6 treadmills, all being used by ladies walking and talking. I mean, just spend your time elsewhere. Go walk outside, use the gym for what it's meant for. So the low intensity stuff is really, it's not efficient. It's a waste of time because, again, these studies are showing that as little as one 10-second bout can moderate blood sugar levels, okay? As little as 6 minutes of interval training can help you burn more fat. And as much as 20 minutes of interval training can reduce your abdominal fat stores by 44% over 8 weeks, doing it 2 to 3 times per week. So it's amazingly powerful. And I just want to make sure that I don't miss anything before I finish off this video. Yeah, I mean, there's other studies comparing specifically about the abdominal fat and overall fat as well. So one specific study which looked at this, they're comparing 40 minutes, right? So 40 minutes steady state cardio, just nice and easy, versus the high intensity stuff over 15 weeks, 3 sessions a week, and they were doing 8 seconds on, 12 seconds off, okay, for a total of 20 minutes. Again, they showed a 0.15 kilogram belly fat loss, as well as the overall fat loss of 2.5 kilograms in the subjects who were doing that type of interval versus just kind of la-di-da-di-da for 40 minutes. Okay, so I hope what this video has gotten across is a couple things. First of all, what interval training is. It's high and low bouts of, or bouts of high and low intensity, which is very important. Secondly, the best protocols for burning fat are going to be on the side of kind of smaller, shorter intervals. So definitely less than, if you can keep them under 30 seconds, and the shorter the better, you're going to benefit a lot more because there's 2 things there. You're not getting into producing a lot of lactic acid, and the shorter the interval, the higher the intensity you're able to run at or exercise at. And the third thing we wanted to cover in this video is why is this happening? And why it's happening is because you're spending more of your time at a higher intensity, which is great. You're also going to get a epoch effect, so you're going to burn calories after the workout, although some studies have shown that it's not as significant as we once thought. About 6 to 15% of total calories is attributed to that post-exercise period versus the majority of the work during the workout is really what's most important. But again, if you're spending high amounts or more time at a high intensity, you're doing that because you're going to be stimulating the release of those hormones to break down more fat stores in your body, and that is a very, very, very powerful thing. So, with that said, we'll stop it there because I know I've been going on for a while here. Hopefully this video has been highly informative. You know I love interval training. Again, I have nothing, there's nothing against slow, long duration, low intensity. I mean, I do it every now and then as well as a recovery session. Okay, I'm not using that as a way to burn more fat or improve my performance. Okay, it's used as a recovery tool or a warm-up tool, not as a form of workout. All right, so one final thing, one other reason that interval training actually helps burn more fat or lose weight is that it actually has been shown to decrease your appetite. And some of the theories on this are interesting because there's a peptide called CRF, or corticotropin releasing factor, which is very similar to what it does is it actually inhibits appetite. And there's also the other fact that when you're exercising, you have 80% less blood flow to your gut. So less blood going through your digestive system, which obviously doesn't make you want to eat. So we'll stop it there for today. Tomorrow's video, we're going to talk about more benefits, health benefits, performance enhancing benefits of interval training. And hopefully this video has taught you a ton. Remember, shorter intervals, higher intensity, that is the key to burning fat, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.